Good evening, everyone, or good morning, wherever you're coming from. I'm taking for granted we're all in the EST,
Yeah.
but who knows where you may be joining from. Thank you so much for being here at our monthly Limitless Leaders webinar. And this is a time that we get together as leaders and talk about whatever we've been talking about all month. And I'm so happy to see one of my panelists who was here, like another guest speaker who was here before, Dr. Marilyn. Welcome, welcome.
Hi.
Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Good evening, everyone. How are you, Simone?
I am well. I'm well. Happy to be on the tail end of this day and to be
Yes,
talking about this great topic.
especially if you've been out in the human verse, it's like you just want to woosah.
Yes, indeed. I love that, the human verse. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to share where you're joining from, we would love to know where you're joining in from and why you would interested in this particular topic. This theme, every month, I focus all of my content around a particular theme. And this month, we've been talking about when leadership hurts. So typically, we always hear about what leaders are doing to people and how toxic leaders are and who's the bad boss. But we don't ever talk about the other side of the coin. I've not heard many people talk about when people hurt leaders, when we get our feelings hurt, when we get disappointed, when we get betrayed, when we are in situations that we feel are burdensome or unbearable. We don't know where to turn. We don't know who to trust. It's when they say it's lonely at the top, that's one of the reasons why, right? Like who relates to us and where is the safe space? People have created platforms now talking about, where does HR go when HR needs HR? And it's really tough out there, right? Like, who do you trust? Who cares about HR or who cares about the leaders who are out in the spaces? And this is why I've really created these communities and these forums for us to have these honest conversations and for leaders to have a safe space to share, to ask questions, because we all learn from each other and we grow together. And it helps to know that we're not alone and we're not journeying all by ourselves in some of these situations. And so I'm very, very pleased tonight to welcome for the first time, and hopefully not the last time, my new LinkedIn friend, Geralda Larkins. And I'm so, so happy to have her joining. She's joining us from Florida. Woo-hoo. I always like to say, I'm partly from the 305 and from the 242, which is our area code here in the Bahamas. So I was actually born in Miami, Florida. I don't think I told you that, Geraldo. But I'm the only person in my family who's born in Miami. My mom had a high risk pregnancy, and her mother lived in Miami. And so she spent her last trimester with her mom until she had me. And we lived there for a couple of months and then came back to the Bahamas where I've lived for the rest of my life. And so I'm a American by birth, but definitely a daughter of Bahamian soil and Bahamian parents. And so it's my pleasure to welcome Geralda Larkins, who brings 25 years of human resources leadership experience to every stage she steps on. She's a former director of labor and employee relations at the Internal Revenue Service and HR director for the city of North Miami. She's directed thousands of ethics investigations, disciplinary actions, negotiated national labor agreements, and built compliance programs that delivered multi-million dollar monetary awards with zero audit findings. She holds both the SPHR and the PSHRA SCP designations and has spoken at the Federal Dispute Resolution Conference, Black Enterprise Women of Power Summit, and the Public Sector HR Association Annual Conference. Today, through Geralda Larkins Consulting. She serves as a strategic workforce and employee relations advisor to businesses, nonprofits, and organizational leaders seeking experienced guidance during critical workplace moments. So I know that we have the right lady for the job for this topic tonight, when leadership hurts. And so we welcome you, Geralda, to this platform.
Thank you so much, Simone. It's just an honor to be here. And you resonated with me in this topic. We talked about just everything that's been going on in the federal government space. You can see it on the news, a lot of hurt leaders out there. And excited to talk about, this topic and how I was able to transition through it as well. It just resonates. And when you said, who does HR go to when HR is the one who is, going through these transitions and these very painful moments? Because leaders overall, they're expected to remain composed, strategic, competent. We got to be available. We're responsible for helping others navigate uncertainty, while privately we're carrying our own disappointments, exhaustion, grief, and doubt a lot of times. And so many leaders just keep functioning, they just keep going. We know how to attend the meeting, right? Show up and still deliver that presentation and make the difficult decisions and support the team and solve the next problem. And we're continuing to perform and not necessarily taking care of our emotional health. And that's the reason I jumped on the opportunity to join you tonight on this platform and to share. I talk about it a lot on the second edition of my book, Train, Transform, Transition, A Strategic Approach to the Life You Deserve. Um, I started this framework like 10 years ago. I started using Train, Transform, Transition. That's my framework. That's what I use for any coaching assignment, how I'm going to build whatever I'm going to build, whatever I'm going to start doing next. It's about preparing, growing, and moving through the change. But I had to learn, it's like through these years, who do you become as you're moving? There's a lot that happens to leaders as you're transitioning. So, how do you recover without becoming bitter? How do you remain compassionate after betrayal, right? How do you protect your integrity when compromise would be easier? And how do you rebuild your confidence after being questioned and diminished in an environment for too long, right? And how do you also prevent these wounds from shaping the way you lead others? That's the big deal. And so for me, my faith was an essential source of grounding for me, of meaning and resilience. And so I had to write the next phase of this framework. Part 4 was triumph. It wasn't written from theory. It was written from personal experience. And I talk about how life, right, has a way of taking what we teach and making us live it, right? And so there comes a point in every leader's journey when you're going to not be asked to perform. You're going to be asked and required to decide. Decide what you believe, decide what you stand for, and decide who you will be when the pressure tests your values. And so, whether you're drawing from faith, like I did, or your personal values, your community, from therapy, from coaching, any reflection, any other source, the central invitation is the same. You got to lead from a place of alignment rather than fear. And I can't wait to talk about that tonight. You have to pay attention to your health. Okay. You got to protect your integrity. You got to have some wise boundaries established. And you can't allow a painful environment to redefine who you are, to redefine your values. And so I describe triumph as not the absence of hardship, but it's the ability to move through leadership without losing your character or your clarity or the capacity to lead. And so I'm not coming to you tonight everyone as someone who's never been wounded by leadership. I'm healing. I'm healing, okay, because I'm still in leadership. I'm speaking as someone who's had to learn how to keep following God while healing from what leadership cost me. And so there's a cost to this, to leadership. So we look forward to talking about it. So
Listen, we've already started. This is right? Like,
yes.
whoa. Where do we
Oh
go
my
after
goodness.
that? Where do we go after that, right? So let's
It's
jump into
yeah.
naming it, right? Naming the pain. When we talk about leadership hurts, and you shared quite a bit in what you talked about. Let's break that down a little bit. What are some of the things that cause leaders pain
Yeah.
in the process of leading?
Mm. So when we talk about leadership hurts, we're talking about more than just a demanding workload or stress. Okay. We're talking about the emotional weight of responsibility. Leadership pain can include being accountable for outcomes that you can't fully control, making decisions that affect people's careers and their livelihoods, being criticized without, being able to disclose confidential information. Okay, people don't know what they don't know, so they assume what your motives are for the decisions that you make.
Yeah.
Carrying organizational problems home. Thank God
Woo,
for a good partner. I have a good partner. My husband is just he's had okay, have a good partner. Um, being
this is
expected
important.
being expected to support everyone while receiving very little support for yourself, having your motives questioned, watching others receive recognition for work you helped build. So there's also the pain of leadership disillusionment, which I went through. And that happens when a system or an institution or relationship or mission that you once believed in so strong now no longer reflects the values that once drew you to it. That was my journey. I grew up in federal government. I was there 24 years right out of college, went into the IRS, grew up professionally from there. And so I developed my HR muscles right in the IRS, dealing through every enterprise level of leadership, advising senior officials. I led the COVID response for the IRS. I led us going, having to the post-pandemic return to the office. It's just so much that I had the opportunity to lead because the IRS was so big, and it was just those opportunities. I had the privilege of serving employees from across the country. So I believed very deeply in public service and mission driven leadership and ethical government, right? I went to school for it. Um, and so that's why it was so, my season was so painful for me. It wasn't the pain because I suddenly stopped caring. The pain came for me because I cared so deeply that I found myself repeatedly having to defend the very principles that should have been just foundational, in government. So in the book, I talk about the internal exhaustion that develops when leaders are constantly operating in environments where their ethics are under attack. And there's a particular kind of fatigue that just comes from repeatedly defending things like what's fair, due process, confidentiality, just basic human dignity. And there's the loneliness, like you said, Simone, it's lonely at the top sometimes, right? Loneliness of knowing information that you can't even share and carrying responsibilities that other people can't fully understand. So leaders often struggle to admit that they're hurting because the professional environment, it rewards visible competence, right? And it discourages visible vulnerability. So we're taught to remain calm, manage your emotions, and we're taught to not take things personal. And while those expectations have value, they can become unhealthy when professionalism is interpreted as emotional silence. And I had to learn that professionalism does not require pretending. A leader can acknowledge that, hey, this affected me, while still responding responsibly. A leader can seek counseling, coaching, medical support, spiritual guidance, whatever you need without feeling less capable. And so I talk about that in the book and I explore the difference between performing well and being well. And so a high performing leader can continue just producing like never before, but while carrying emotional exhaustion. And so that was me. I was leading teams, solving problems, meeting deadlines, carrying, managing conflict, advising decision makers. And from the outside, I appeared capable and steady, but internally, I had normalized a level of stress that wasn't sustainable. Okay, and so the first step toward healing was admitting that leadership hurt. It was admitting that leadership had affected me, and you can't meaningfully address what you continue to minimize. Naming the pain is critical. You have to name it, and it doesn't mean that you're allowing it to define you. Naming the pain means becoming honest enough to begin responding to it. Okay. And so that was for me my approach to naming my pain and what I've seen over the years.
Yeah, and I think that's important as well, especially for faith-based people, because I think we're conditioned to say, if I say something that's kind of negative, then it means that I don't have faith, right?
Mm-mm.
That everything has to be positive and everything has to be optimistic. And I know Dr. Marilyn is here. She's, the emotion specialist, right? But I think it is important when we name what it is, that is the beginning point of change.
Absolutely.
Because that's really where the crossroads is. Because now you have to ask yourself, how am I going to address this?
Mm.
How am I going to show up in this space? Do
Yes.
I still want to show up in this space?
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And so sometimes it makes you question. And honestly, when we get to that crossroads, especially when it's a value-based conflict, we
Mm.
talked about where perhaps what you believe and what the organization believes
No
are
longer aligns.
no longer aligned.
Yeah.
And now this not only becomes an external conflict, but now it's an internal
Internal.
conflict.
Absolutely.
And it then begins to impact you and the perception of who you are as a leader in
Yeah.
other ways. And so this leads me to my next question of being misunderstood. That is a pain
Yeah.
because you really sometimes you're not in a position where you can explain yourself.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, you have information that you probably cannot share with
Mhm.
certain audiences. You can't share it with your team.
Mm.
And so people think because of decisions that you would have had to make or because of certain alliances that they perhaps see you
Yeah.
have, that, oh, what happened to her? What happened to him?
Yeah.
You understand
Being
what they're doing.
Absolutely. Being misunderstood, Simone, is one of the most difficult leadership experiences because it creates this strong temptation to over-explain.
Mhm.
And we tend to believe that if we provide enough context, enough documentation, enough evidence, enough clarification, everyone will magically and eventually begin to understand our motives. No. Sometimes clarification does help, but not every misunderstanding comes from a lack of information. Some people are just committed to their interpretation because it supports a particular interest, a particular narrative, or an outcome that has nothing to do with you. Okay. A mature leader has to learn to distinguish between constructive feedback and character distortion. There is a huge difference, and you got to know that. When criticism comes, you got to start asking yourself, is there any truth to this feedback? Did my impact differ from my intentions? Like, this is the decision I made. This is what I was intending to do. Did something misaligned there? Like what my intentions were good, like the impact was good. Is something missing here? Is there something I should clarify or correct? Is this feedback coming from a credible or constructive source? And does this require action, or am I just being pulled into an unproductive conflict? See, integrity, it still requires self-examination. We still got to operate in a level of humility. It just doesn't assume that we're always right. At the same time, self-awareness should not become self-abandonment. Okay, you can't just abandon you know what's going on. You got a gut feeling, you got intuition, you have discernment. And I talk about it in the book because repeated resistance can slowly diminish a leader's confidence. Okay. When leaders are questioned or undermined, dismissed, or you're politically targeted, over time, you can begin to overanalyze yourself. Okay. You
Mhm.
can start to second guess your decisions. And before you used to make them so confidently. Okay. You can start over explaining your intentions. I meant this, but I meant that. No, this is what I meant. They're just like you hesitate now in moments when you used to just move without any issues. You felt so sure about your next step. And I experienced that. Okay. After leaving federal government, I transitioned into local government and experienced some challenges there because I was like, wait a minute, why am I going through this? I was wondering whether was I too direct? Was I too structured, too ethical, too uncompromising? And it's like, think about that. Think about how an unhealthy environment can start making you question whether integrity is the problem. Okay, when you start thinking whether the right thing is the wrong thing, it's
You're
maybe
in
not
trouble.
you, it's the environment
You're in
that you're
trouble.
in. Okay, that environment can make you start wondering whether the very values that you know the organization needs are somehow the problem. And over time, I learned that my responsibility was not to control every interpretation of me. Okay, it meant that I had to acknowledge mistakes when necessary because I'm human, you know. It meant that I had to communicate clearly because leaders have to do that. We have to communicate. Documentation is important. Document as you need to appropriately. And then you just got to release the need to persuade everyone. You really do. And I talk about that in the book about the power of silence. The power of silence is critical as you grow in leadership because not every accusation deserves a defense. Okay. Not every misunderstanding requires an explanation. Not every battle deserves your energy. All right. There were moments, Simone, in my transition where silence protected me more than an argument ever could. Okay. And we're HR. We can make an argument like, okay. So silence is not always weakness. Sometimes silence is wisdom under control. So the
Yes.
question, right, is whether your silence is rooted in fear or whether it's
Right.
rooted in wisdom. Okay.
Right.
You as a leader, you owe people clarity, you owe them honesty, you owe them accountability, but you do not owe everyone unlimited access to your emotional energy. You don't owe them that. And my confidence began to return when I stopped focusing. I focused less on every narrative about me and more and just focused more and staying aligned with who God called me to be. Who is God? What did he say? Where is he calling me? And that's where my focus was. My counsel to any misunderstood leader, examine yourself honestly. Yes, okay. Correct what needs to be corrected. Communicate what needs to be communicated, but you're going to have to release the outcome, okay? Your responsibility is your character, not controlling everybody's interpretation of it. You can't.
No, you really can't. And I love that. I think the movie Equalizer really helped me see that. I don't know why, but just watching how
Yeah.
that Denzel's character
Hmm.
functioned as an operative, as a strategist. That's what it really showed me,
Mm.
that you can gather information, you can see things that you can't unsee, but
Ah,
you don't have to make a move
yeah,
until you are ready to make a move. You don't have to let people know what you know.
yeah, yeah.
So yes, Yolanda said wisdom under control. It's that self-management side of emotional intelligence that
Mm.
we don't have to put everything out on our sleeve.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that was one of the things that I had to learn, especially as a female in executive environments,
Mhm.
in HR, right? So you're
Yeah,
already battling
yeah.
certain things, right? I mean, the perception of being female, the perceptions of HR, and people have mixed feelings about HR, period.
Mm.
And I realized that there were times when I spoke up when I shouldn't have,
Mm.
or I didn't speak because I felt intimidated.
Yeah.
And I had to make sure that I was really assessing every situation and showing up in the best possible way. And
Yeah.
I realized that even for my team, sometimes they were expecting me to be an advocate. It's like,
Mm.
hey, we're rooting for you, we're behind you 100%, but we're expecting you to go and do some battle for us.
Yes. And that's
But
the
then
thing. Yeah.
you have to choose your battle,
You
though.
got to choose. I was just gonna say, when you're in that room and you're the only woman, or you're the HR head, or you're the only one that looks like us on this camera, okay, you have to choose your battle. You got to be strategic. My
You have to be
concern for
strategic.
me was being rooted in and just being aligned with my identity. That identity work is so critical for me and for any leader because you got to make decisions. Even and
Yeah,
not making a decision is a decision.
it's a
Even not
decision.
speaking is a decision, you know? And so it's so critical to be self-aware and very clear on who you are, what your values are, and that you're operating from a space. Your silence has to be connected to wisdom, making sure that the timing, reading the room, all of those things, the emotional intelligence, the discernment is very important as you reach the C-suite, you know? You can't
Mhm.
just say anything, but then absolutely, I'm with you 100%. I had those same experiences of, oh, I wish I would have said so. Oh, I should have said that. You know,
Yes, and you
we
beat
have those,
yourself up all night.
yeah, replaying it.
If I had the chance, this is what I would
Yeah,
do. And it's like, oh,
yeah, for
I
sure.
missed it. I missed it. And
Uh-huh.
all we could do is learn from it
Yes.
and just continue to keep showing up and doing
Hmm.
what we do. The next area or pain point for leaders or painful moments is being used, feeling used, and feeling overlooked, right? Like feeling like your contributions are not appreciated, especially when you talked about workload and you talked about giving the excess. You talked about your family members and loved ones having to be so understanding because of everything that you're doing and that you're bringing home all of the emotional trauma of everything.
Yeah.
And it still feels like it's never enough.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
giving, I'm giving, I'm giving. And it just is like, well, that's what you're supposed to do.
Mm.
Or someone else gets the credit that
Come
no
on.
one is calling your name
Yeah.
when they are recognizing this great work. How do you deal with that type of pain? And how do you establish boundaries that protect you, so you can still be available, that you can
Mm.
still give
Yeah.
without feeling bitter and angry.
Well, Simone, let me tell you something. We're human, so repeatedly being overlooked affects more than ego. It can make a leader start to question whether their contributions matter. And that is a bigger deal than, the recognition? Do I even matter? Am I valuable? Am I worthy? That becomes the disappointment. It can create resentment. It can create withdrawal. Even the temptation to withhold the very gifts that you used to give so freely in your organization, you can start to withhold them. So leaders can begin comparing themselves to others in these moments, overworking to prove their value, becoming preoccupied with recognition, because recognition is important. Don't get me wrong, recognition is important. Okay, I could name scripture, that's Bible. But people should be acknowledged for their contributions, but recognition and value are not identical. And that's so important to remember. A contribution doesn't become insignificant simply because the organization failed to acknowledge it. And so I talk about in the book about the grief that can emerge when you have given your best to an environment that no longer seems to value what you carry. That is very painful. The grief of that is real. And we can't sugarcoat that, as leaders. You work so hard. The grief of serving faithfully while trust erodes from the people. The grief of watching work that you helped establish continue without your name being attached to it. The grief of realizing that loyalty alone can't repair an unhealthy system. And so that's that identity work that is critical for leaders if you're going to last. Identity work is so important. My healing required me to separate my identity from the institution. Okay. I had to recognize that my experience, my wisdom, character, and ability to contribute were not confined to this one position. My purpose traveled with me. My expertise traveled with me. My ability to lead, teach, advise, solve problems, create value, all travels with me. My purpose is not confined to one institution. And so my gifts, I had to begin to realize that my gifts didn't begin when an organization recognized them. They didn't disappear when the organization resisted them. So I'm telling all the leaders on the call today, your purpose travels with you. Your experience, your wisdom, your character, your abilities all travel with you. And that realization helped me move from feeling replaced to understanding that I was being restored and repositioned. And in that season, leaders got to manage that resentment by grieving honestly. I had to grieve honestly what was hurting, what was lost, what was being done to me, how it was affecting me, without building an identity around that offense. Okay, you can be resentful. You could start saying the reason is because of these excuses and this person did that to you and all of that. That cannot be you have to grieve that. You have to honestly let that piece go. Grief said this mattered to me and it hurt, but bitterness is another baby altogether. Okay, bitterness says because this happened, I will allow this wound to determine who I become.
Oh,
That's what bitterness does. And so you got to make sure that you grieve properly and learn how to let this thing go and stay aligned with your true identity, with your true values and who you are, and not allow bitterness and resentment to make you cold and you start becoming and shaping your character around this thing that happened to you. And so I talk about how it reframes the idea in the book that triumph is more than receiving some external reward. Triumph is not some trophy, it's not some destination. Triumph is maintaining your identity through the seasons of pressure, through the seasons of change and challenge that every leader has to go through. Okay, triumph is maintaining your identity through that, refusing to become bitter after after disappointment and continuing to serve with compassion even after you've been hurt, okay? And sometimes the healthiest response is just to remain and continue contributing in that organization. Sometimes it's to establish a boundary, okay? Sometimes it's to leave, which is what I decided to do. But the decision, whatever decision you make, has to come from a place of clarity, not a place of retaliation. Not a place of retaliation, not a place of resentment and bitterness. Okay. Being used, service is so central to true, a person that has a true heart for leadership. You're thinking about service, but service shouldn't require self erasure. It shouldn't erase you, okay? So many compassionate and capable leaders, they confuse being needed with being valued. And that's not the same thing, okay? Someone may value what you provide without valuing you as a person, okay? They value your access, they value your influence, they value your ability to solve problems, they value your emotional support. But when the relationship lacks reciprocity, when the relationship lacks respect, accountability, or concern for your well being, it may no longer be healthy service. Okay. It can be exploitation. Right. And so you have to start, you just some questions you can ask yourself is what happens if I say no? What happens if you say no? Healthy people may be disappointed, but healthy people will respect your boundaries. Okay. People who are using you often become angry, manipulative, accusatory. They can become distant when your availability changes, right? So another question I ask is, does this relationship allow me to be human or only useful? Okay, so can I have needs too? Can I express an opinion or some concern? Can I disagree? Can I take a break? Can I rest? Can I be unavailable? Okay. Can I tell the truth without fearing retaliation, without fearing punishment or withdrawal? Healthy professional relationships include respect, appropriate reciprocity, and room for honest communication. And so I talk about in the book how I just, my understanding of boundaries just had to change. Early in my career, sometimes I view boundaries as rejection or some evidence that I wasn't being sufficiently committed. And later I came to understand that boundaries are protection, okay? Boundaries protect your judgment, they protect your health. Boundaries protect relationships and the quality of the work that you produce. And in some cases, boundaries protect your integrity. When I was transitioning in federal service, there were moments, Simone, when the professional expectations came into direct conflict with my ethical judgment. In HR, the things that the stories that we're, brought into. And
Yeah.
I encountered pressure involving fairness and confidentiality and sensitive employee matters, due process, and the proper use of authority. And so at that point, I had to establish a boundary, not simply because of work-life balance. I had to establish a boundary because of my professional integrity and my credibility was on the line. And so I decided that, whether um, maintaining a title, whether maintaining access or influence was worth acting against the very principles that I had spent my years protecting. And so for me, it just wasn't worth it. Okay. That decision had consequences though. Okay, it required me releasing a role. I walked away from familiarity, from professional relationships, a career path that I spent over 2 decades building, but it preserved my identity. It preserved my integrity. It preserved my well-being. I could sleep at night. I could look myself in the mirror and be like, I didn't do that. And the
Yeah.
objective, is not to, after all of that, not to become suspicious of everybody. Okay. Unhealed leaders sometimes move from having no boundaries to not letting anybody in. at all.
Right.
Right?
Right. That's the
Okay.
opposite extreme.
It's the whole opposite, right? That's not balance. You got to have healthy
Mhm.
boundaries because those allow us to remain generous without being endlessly available. We can remain compassionate without having to rescue everybody. We can
Everybody.
serve without surrendering our judgment. They allow us to remain open, but yet still discerning. You can forgive without restoring this unrestricted access to you. And so for me, and you know, my faith, Jesus served people deeply. He didn't allow every demand to determine his movements. He withdrew, he rested, he moved according to his assignment. And so this is the model for me. Availability guided by purpose, not guilt. You're not going to guilt me into changing my boundary, right? It's going to be availability that's built by purpose. And so that's how, you know, I've been able to, I'm managing this dynamic.
No, I think that's really, really rich and great advice as we all journey through this in some way, shape, or
Yeah.
form. This isn't a point of mastery. It's a
Mm,
journey,
yeah.
and every situation teaches us more about how we need to establish these boundaries and how we need to self-care. It's
Yes.
not just spa treatments and getting our hair done. It's really how am I caring for myself as much as I care for others? How am I prioritizing
Yeah.
my needs and not everybody else's? I like that, Aretha, you shared that your hurt is that people don't check on you the
Mm,
way that you check on other people,
yeah.
that you're hoping that someone would care enough to say, how are you doing? You know? Did you want to share a little bit more about that?
Hello, everyone. People often tell me that I'm there for them.
Mm,
And a lot of the people that I spiritually counsel, I spiritually give advice to or mentor, they call me their friend. They actually do. But I cannot call people my friend because it's always about them.
mm,
And it's like that for me in every room that I go into.
mm,
I am a very personal and intimate person, so I get to know an individual. Once I sit with you, I ask you about you. I ask you questions about yourself. But I find that not many people are like that, and people do not take the time to even listen to you because they're so busy making it about them all the time and every time.
mm,
And so if you are a person who is strong in the Lord and strong in your faith and strong in your walk, and you're constantly encouraging others as well as encouraging yourself, sometimes I feel that they don't think that you go through stuff as well. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
there are times where I break down.
Yeah.
There are
Mhm.
days that I go through that I am
Yes.
down. I
Hmm.
Yeah.
don't want to talk
That's
to anyone. I'm just crying. I'm sad. I might be depressed
Mm,
for days. But the only difference is who and what I draw my resource and my
come
sources from,
through. That's
which is
good.
hmm
God,
Yeah.
right? And then
hmm
He pours into me where I can get up and pour back into the people. But people really do not check on me. They don't even take the time to say, Aretha, how are you doing?
Mhm.
What's
hmm
going on with you? And really mean it and stay in that moment and listen to me. So I don't even tell people how I'm doing really.
And not
Because
everybody can
I'm like,
handle it.
what's the
Not
point?
everybody
No,
can handle
No, they
it,
can't.
Aretha,
No, they
no.
especially in
cannot.
leadership.
No,
We
they
have
cannot.
these types of communities are so important where you are with other like-minded, like-aligned leaders because it's about the weight of responsibility. Okay.
Yes.
So, the responsibility of the people and their emotional well-being and what they are expecting for you to bring requires that you stay healthy, requires that you stay grounded because of the assignment that you have. They can't see you in that capacity, or they will not be able to get through, right? My
Mhm.
main thing is that we gotta, as long as we all understand this pressure to be the strong one, okay, it is a farce. It is not
Mhm.
realistic. There's a
Mhm.
danger of always being the strong one, and that people may stop asking whether we're okay. Long as you don't stop asking yourself if you're okay, the that's my caution. Keep
Mhm.
asking yourself as a leader, are you okay? Check in with yourself. Are you okay? Because when strength becomes part of your identity,
Mhm.
you're the person that handles the problem. You're the one that
Amen.
has to remain calm. You're
Mhm.
always the one that has to have the answer. You support everyone else, but a leader can be dependable and depleted at the same time.
That's
Okay.
right.
So, one of the things I talk about is that functioning is not the same as flourishing. So, I thank you so much for putting it out there that we cry, we got to do the things, okay? Be in the prayer closet and doing the disciplines of our faith to remain aligned and ready, okay? Because you might get that phone call. And whatever you have to do in order to um, be well, you put those things in place because of the assignment, and it's not wasted. Your obedience is never wasted, okay? It's all just you're yes, you're not. We can have these. Listen, the warning signs, irritability, okay, emotional numbness, withdrawing from relationships, difficulty sleeping and resting, replaying conversations repeatedly in your head, anticipating conflict before it even comes, feeling guilty when you're not producing, okay, losing interest in things that once brought you so much joy, neglecting yourself physically, not taking care of yourself, not going to your doctor's appointments like you're supposed to, not eating healthy, feeling like asking for help would disappoint others. Listen, I experience all of those. You will experience all of those things.
Mhm.
Okay. Following years of just intense leadership responsibility and organizational conflict I had to go through, I became accustomed to just operating at this like heightened state of alert. Okay. And after entering just this a different environment, sometimes again, I was in local government operating at that same level of intensity. It was not going to work. My body was carrying this stress because I
Mhm.
haven't fully processed it, right? And
Mhm.
so eventually I started having health challenges because of these issues. And I had to start taking rest and recovery seriously. And so for me, rest is no longer a weakness, my sister. Okay,
Mhm.
listen.
Mhm.
It was
It's a must.
it was a reward, okay, for me to get some rest. It's a form of stewardship at the end of the day. And you have to recognize that leadership effectiveness can't be separated from emotional and physical and psychological health. And so, depending on a person's needs, the support may be therapy, may be coaching, medical care, trusted colleagues in forums like this, okay? Faith leaders. You got to go on vacations, rest and take the time that you need. Go on a sabbatical if you have to throughout the year and just say, I'm disconnecting for right now. But for
Mhm.
me, it was prayer, scripture, the whole things, all of the disciplines of my faith. That was a real part of my restoration. And for someone else, the practices may be different, but the universal lesson is that no leader should be expected to carry everything alone. It was never
No,
intended to be that way,
never,
right?
never.
Healthy strength includes knowing when support is necessary.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's so good. That's so good. And from one giver to another, Aretha, I want to share that that's something that I had to come to terms with. You know, some of us are in very giving professions, And we're also giving people, which is why we're probably attracted to giving professions. And we have to learn. I had to learn this the hard way. Like was that person who, you know, I'd be at midnight if you called and said,
Right?
I'm in a crisis. I need you, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not just on a phone call with you in the crisis. I'm like getting in my car and I'm going in my pocket. I'm
Mm.
crying with you. I'm everything. I'm just over the top.
Yeah.
And what I realize is that givers will always give and takers will always take.
Mm.
It's just who we are, right?
Yeah.
So, as givers, we have to establish the parameters in which I will give.
Yeah.
And so I had to realize, all right, now I'm depleting my cash flow to help somebody else. There's something wrong with this picture. So I can help you. And I got very comfortable in saying, as I have someone who always reaches out and they're doing this charitable work and they reach out and say, oh, can you give me a seed? I don't have a problem giving the seed, but I'm going to tell you when I cannot. So you could come at me every month, but doesn't mean that I'm going to give you every month, right? And you had to get comfortable with that because you would be afraid, as you said, people aren't going to ask me anymore. People are going to think that I'm a certain way, that I'm mean, or that I'm something that I'm not.
Mm.
And you have to get comfortable
Yeah.
with prioritizing yourself and your needs with still helping and serving others to your capacity. And this, if it's the time that's for you, like at a certain point, I'm not taking a phone call,
Mm.
right? I'm not going into a long conversation of listening and helping you and counseling you and all of these other things. I'm
Yeah.
not doing that on my time or on my family time or on my self-care time or whatever
Mm.
the case may be. I would be at a getting a mani and pedi is supposed to be my time, relaxing and call, texting, this and that. And even the person giving the service to me would be like, why are you even here? Like you're not enjoying this,
Yeah.
because you're still caught up in over giving. Yeah. So what's your response there, Aretha?
I just want to say that many times we take on assignments that God didn't give to us.
Mm.
Yep.
Mm.
Mm.
Yep. It's
And
true.
so I've learned that years ago, and I don't have a problem saying no.
Mhm.
No,
Mhm.
I can't do that. No, I won't do that. But I do not take on assignments if the Lord did not give me that assignment. And
Mhm.
I will know if it's my assignment from the moment I'm speaking with the individual, from the moment I meet that person.
That discernment, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that discernment will tell me whether or not,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. And the more I love how you talk about identity, Geralda, because the more we learn who we are,
Yeah.
the more comfortable we get
Yes.
asserting who we are in
Yes.
every situation and being able to discern
Mhm.
what is aligning with me and what is not.
So important. It's so
It
important. I can't
really
tell
is.
you.
I remember the late Dr. Miles Monroe would always share this about vision.
Mhm.
And he would say that vision gives you boundaries. Vision
Yes.
will tell you what lane you ought to be running in.
Mhm. Gotta
And so
see
you
it.
don't need to be distracted by anything else. If this is the vision, this is the mission that you're running on, this is your assignment,
Mhm.
then you will be able to very clearly recognize what aligns with that and what does not.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about this next leadership pain before we wrap up. And this is being betrayed or
Okay.
broken trust. This is when we've given, we've trusted, we have mentored, we've
Mhm.
coached, we've given our best to someone, to an organization. Sometimes we can be betrayed by an organization.
Yeah.
Sometimes we've shared something in confidence, thinking that we're helping a situation, and then they use that information against you or they throw you under the bus. They
Yeah.
betray, they expose what you were trying to do, which was just to help.
Yeah.
How do we deal with being betrayed?
Oh, betrayal hurts at the point of trust. It runs deep. It's especially painful when it comes from someone, like you said, someone you've supported, you've mentored, advocated for, defended, and welcomed into your space, into your confidence. When trust is violated, leaders often, don't only question the other person, they start to question themselves. Like, how did I miss this? Like, was my discernment like off, And was my judgment poor? Can I trust myself to evaluate people? Will this happen to me again? And the one reason betrayal can affect future relationships is because you're thinking this, you're without healing from that disappointment and from that betrayal. We can make new people pay for what previous people did. And so the goal is to carry the lesson forward without carrying the wound into every future interaction. So for me, forgiveness has both a spiritual and practical dimension. So my faith teaches me, not to remain consumed by, revenge and resentment. But from a professional and relational standpoint, forgiveness also means releasing the need to allow someone else's actions to control my emotional future. Okay. Forgiveness does not automatically mean renewed access to me at the same level that you once had. Forgiveness, reconciliation, and trust are related, but they're not identical. They're very different. Forgiveness can be a personal decision that you make, but reconciliation, regaining that level of access to me, that requires participation on both sides. All right. Trust requires consistency and evidence. You're going to have to show up and prove something. Okay. It requires the trust, but access also requires judgment. Not everybody needs to have access to you. A person can be forgiven without being restored to the same position in your life. A relationship can be released without being resumed, right? So in some circumstances, it can involve a direct conversation and rebuilding. In others, healing may require distance. Okay. In determining factors should be accountability. Okay. Are they taking ownership for what happened? Does the change behavior? I got to see some change in this behavior. I have to have some emotional safety as well. Okay. I got to feel like, okay, we're going to be okay to have these conversations at a level that we probably once had. That takes time to rebuild that level of vulnerability again. Okay, so renewed contact is healthy, has to be healthy for everyone involved when you're talking about reconciliation. It can't be one-sided. It has to be both parties working toward that reconciliation. And so I talk about in the book that forgiveness doesn't mean tolerating dysfunction. It doesn't mean removing your boundaries. It doesn't even mean pretending that the pain never happened or restoring someone to the same level of access to you. That's not what forgiveness means. It means refusing to allow resentment to become that organizing principle of your future. That resentment cannot be the place that you now start from. Your character can't springboard from resentment. You have to, you cannot bypass grief. You have to grieve what happened. It hurt. You will be betrayed and it's going to hurt. Okay. Sometimes leaders, we're forced to forgive without allowing the time to acknowledge the pain and the loss and the disappointment and the anger and the betrayal. It hurt but healing, if you're really going to heal from it, it's going to require honesty. Okay. I could not spiritually bypass betrayal. Okay. I couldn't simply say God is good while refusing to admit that this thing hurt. Okay. Grief and faith can occupy the same moment. Okay.
Mm.
And so you can release resentment and still acknowledge that that experience impacted you. Trust after betrayal has to be rebuilt slowly and wisely. Okay. And you don't need to become suspicious of everybody. You don't have to let suspicion be that sense of suspicion now grounds you. No, you should be discerning, absolutely discerning, especially as you grow in leadership. The impact to you has ramifications, okay? When you're not good, it affects not just you, but everybody that you serve. So you got to be good. So you have to be discerning. You have to be wise. But triumph is not about returning to some level of naivete about this person that just tried you. Okay. No, don't be deceived. Okay. But it's about triumph is really about becoming wiser without becoming bitter. That's the goal. Be wise, but don't be bitter. Be discerning, but don't despise people. You know what I mean? It's like you have to have a level of you got to make sure that you're not operating from a place of resentment because betrayal will absolutely happen. You trust is going to be broken. But as long as you're operating from a place where you're very clear on what happened, you grieve the very realities of what happened, you can then be able to move forward in a positive direction.
Absolutely. I love that. And sometimes betrayal and feeling used can go together,
Yeah, for sure.
right? And so then you just learn. You learn, you grieve it, you forgive, you assess,
Hmm.
you understand, okay, this is how I showed up because you always have to take personal responsibility, right? It can't always just be the other person.
Sure.
What did I do? How did I maybe overgive? Or how maybe did I overshare? Or
Yeah.
maybe I did not establish boundaries in the very beginning, or
Mhm.
whatever it is. And the next time, this is how
Hmm.
I'm going to show up,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Because we can't say, well, oh, I'm never going to mentor anybody anymore on my team.
No.
I'm never going to give them an opportunity. I'm never going to push them forward because this is what happens. They go forward, they leave me behind. They don't give me the credit. They don't say it that I was the one, I was the wind beneath their wings, right? I mean,
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
can't do that. We just have to
No, we
just
can't.
bless them, let them move on. We learn our lessons and we continue to give because that is what our purpose is as leaders. It's our responsibility, right? To cultivate and to groom and to give and to make
Mhm.
contribution. And so my absolutely last point. Oh my gosh, this is so good. This is so good. But this is the
Tell
last one,
me.
I promise.
Okay, okay.
What about when you feel restricted?
Mm,
You feel oppressed and suppressed, that you can't fully give or your gifts, your expression, your contribution, your value. And
yes.
it's either because people don't see it or it's because they do see it.
Yeah. There you go.
And they don't want to put their sunglasses on because of your shine. They just want to dull your shine
Yes.
and they don't want you to really fully
Mm,
be who you are.
mm.
How do you handle? And I really feel this one because I
Yeah.
think I felt this everywhere that I've worked, just about,
Yeah.
and I know I have my ways of dealing with it, but how do you deal with that? How do you deal with feeling restricted?
Let me just validate what you're saying. It's so real. One of the most frustrating experiences for any leader is knowing that you have more to contribute than your current environment allows, right? You see the problem. You have the knowledge and the experience to help. You have a clear strategy and a solution. But for some reason or another, whether it's organizational politics or culture, limited resources, leadership changes, or simply timing, or like you said, they want to block your shine, your contribution isn't fully welcomed in an environment. So over time, that type of restriction can be deeply discouraging for a leader. And some leaders begin to shrink themselves. Okay. Some leaders can stop speaking up. Some leaders can overwork to prove they're valued and say, see me, others quietly just disengage, right? And some remain in the role long after the environment had stopped being healthy because they're afraid of what leaving an environment might mean. And so the temptation is to believe that because your gifts aren't being used there, that they no longer have value. And that's one of the biggest lies leaders tell themselves. And I talk about that so much in the book. And the question I ask is whether an environment is stretching you or simply restricting you. That's the question to ask. A stretching environment develops you, okay? A restrictive environment continuously suppresses your contributions. So you've got to learn to tell the difference because that's critical. And here's the lesson I learned that even when one environment couldn't fully utilize my gifts, I didn't stop using them. I just simply found other places where I could flourish. After leaving federal service, I had a choice. I could spend my energy grieving a 24-year career, okay, that I lost, or I could use this time to reinvest in what nobody can take from me. And so I started building. I started rebuilding. I rebuilt my consulting firm. I had a consulting practice and ministry since 2015, but I had just like, as you're growing leadership, just things evolve. And I just started laser focusing on my executive roles at IRS. But I just started rebuilding that again. And then just as another avenue to start serving other organizations with the very expertise that I had accumulated for over 25 years. I became intentional about sharing ideas again. That's how I connected with you, Simmone, just getting back
Right.
on LinkedIn again and re-engaging my social media community. I started writing again, speaking more again. I launched a YouTube series, Triumph, that you're going to be on soon. And I put out a second edition of my book to talk about the journey that I went through. So yeah, I started saying yes to conferences again and yes to professional associations and getting back to mentorship again and investing in building new professional relationships instead of just mourning the old ones and the closed doors that were behind me. None of these opportunities required permission from my former employer or anybody else. And that's when I realized something super important. An organization can limit your position, but it doesn't have to limit your contribution. Your employer may give you a role, it may give you a title, but your purpose gives you a platform. Okay. And if one platform begins to be too small for what you've been called to contribute, don't stop contributing, just build another platform. Okay. And because sometimes we've attached our gifts so tightly to one employer that we forget that our expertise belong to us. Okay. Your knowledge doesn't disappear with your title. Your wisdom doesn't expire because your role at one organization ended. Your voice doesn't become less valuable because one organization stopped listening. Right. So, one of the practical things that leaders can do when they're going through restricted seasons and just start asking themselves, where else can my gifts create value? Maybe it's consulting, maybe it's teaching, writing, mentoring, giving back, serving on a nonprofit board, volunteering your expertise, becoming more active in the professional associations that govern your profession. Maybe it's finally launching that business and writing the book that you've been, saying you're going to write for so many years, right? It's sometimes there. These are the restrictive seasons in one lane can be your expansion season in a totally different lane if you change your perspective. So looking back, I'm grateful I didn't wait for another organization to come around and validate my expertise before I started using my gifts again. I just reclaimed it. Okay. That's what I call triumph. Not because every door was open to me. Okay. No, this economy is challenging. And this job market is not for the faint of heart. Okay. But I stopped allowing one closed door to determine the size of my future. Your title is a position, your expertise is an asset, and your purpose is portable. Portable, okay? So you got to just remember that there's a difference between being stretched and being restricted. Okay, just so really analyze that and determine what season and what is this environment really doing. And so in the book, I talk about some questions that you should ask yourself. Is this environment developing me or diminishing me? Am I staying in this environment, in this role, because it still aligns with my purpose or because I'm afraid to leave? Okay. Are my values consistently being compromised? Have I normalized any patterns that are damaging my confidence or my health? Okay. Am I protecting a title more than I'm protecting my integrity? These are really serious questions that you should be asking yourself because from the outside, people looked at my career and they were like, "Oh, I achieved this whole level of professional success. I had national scope programs, executive influence, credibility, stability." And leaving did not appear logical to everybody, okay? But success and alignment are not always the same. And a person can be accomplished and restricted at the same time. Okay. So a person can be needed and still need to leave. Okay. A person can have influence and still recognize that the environment no longer supports healthy or ethical leadership. And so it's courage. It takes courage to transition. It takes courage to move. Courageous transition doesn't mean an absence of fear. No, you be afraid. It just means that fear is not making the decision. Okay. You have to operate from a place of wisdom, place of clarity. And so that's where I would say check the season, make sure you're asking yourself some key questions to determine am I being stretched versus restricted, and just recognize for yourself your gifts. You can contribute without being constrained to one specific environment.
Absolutely. And that has been my life lesson.
Yeah,
Wherever I felt restricted, and most places I have,
I saw
I
you. Yes, I see
I
you.
would just get out there. And that's how
Yeah.
I honestly created a platform because I'm like, I need an outlet for all of this other stuff that's still bubbling here that I cannot give here. I'm going to find a way to do that. And I have family members say, well, when you're on this job, you need to focus on your job. You can't let these people see you out there doing this or doing that or being on flyers and this. And I'm like, I don't particularly care, right? I'm not doing it on their time. I'm doing it on
Yep.
my time. If they wanted me to do it there, I'd be happy to do it there. If they don't want me to do it, so I'm going to do it where I want to do it. And just out of your experience of, you can spend almost a lifetime building something that can change in the blink of an eye. And what then, right? And
Yes.
so for me, it's always been like, I've been on the side of life where you've had to rebuild from nothing.
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
like, I've learned my lesson from that. I'm going to continually build because one day this season may change and I'm
Yep.
going to I'm going to be ready for when that season changes. So I'm going to pause here. If anyone has any comments or questions, I know everyone has really kept the chat alive tonight. I appreciate that, giving your feedback and your comments and your questions. And so if anyone wants to share anything at this point, we can take a few moments to do that before we wrap up with our closing comments. But I know that this has certainly resonated with so many of you. You've shared that this is timely, that this
Oh,
is something that's just been so helpful for
thank you.
you. And that is the purpose. That is why we do this. So anyone want to share in the chat or open your mic and share, you're welcome to do so at this time. And also, Gerald, I'll ask if you want to share in the chat how people can reach you and how people can get your book.
Oh, yes. Let me type it in there. GeraldaLarkins.com. All my information is there. Get in this chat.
Mhm.
Uh, Larkins.com. On my social media, everything is, connect with me at geraldalarkins.com. Okay, did it go through? Okay, perfect.
Yes. Hmm.
Oh no, I spelled it wrong. Okay,
Oh,
help me
yeah.
out. Larkin. Probably should have had this
You
already.
have to do in Zoom, you have to do the HTTPS
Oh, you
thing
have to do
before.
that?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it'll be clickable.
Okay, HTTPS forward slash.
Hmm.
Okay. You know what? Okay, you tested me now. Okay, hold on. Let me just go to the site and put it in here. But no questions, right? Copy.
No questions.
Okay, there you go. Yes? No?
Can we get the book on the site?
Yes, you absolutely can. You absolutely can. It's Train, Transform, Transition, a strategic approach to the life you deserve. I just launched the second edition to capture this journey that we've been talking about, this testimony, really. I want to just validate the hurt that leaders go through. This is a real topic, and it's something that, like you said, Simone, we don't talk enough about. To the leader who's hurting in silence, I just want you to know that, being affected by leadership doesn't make you weak. It makes you human.
Mhm.
Okay, what happened may have affected your confidence, but it doesn't erase your competence. I need you to remember that. You may have changed your environment, but it doesn't eliminate your ability to contribute. And it may cost you relationships. It may cost you a title, an opportunity, a sense of security, but it doesn't have to determine the rest of your story. So don't confuse an unhealthy environment with personal deficiency in any way, okay? Seek the support you need, protect your health, revisit your values, establish those boundaries, and remember that your purpose, your expertise, your ability to lead, these are larger than just one institution or just one difficult season. So you can move forward being wiser, not becoming bitter because of past hurts and betrayal and things that have been done to you. You can build something healthier from the expertise and the experience that you've overcome, that you've gone through. So I encourage everyone to just connect with me online. I cannot wait to just, continue to hear your stories. If there's anything, any questions you want to take offline, just reach out to me via my website. Just shoot me an email. I'm happy to share my story, happy to give you encouragement if you're going through a tough leadership transition. Again, all of my stuff is on geraldalarkins.com. So again, thank you so much, Simone, for this opportunity.
I have a
Yes,
quick
thank
question for
you.
Geralda.
Go
Yes.
ahead.
Are you always in this mode? And if so, how do you shut it down?
Okay, what
Like
mode are we
when
on?
people, like when you meet people and they know who you are, they know the kind of
Yes.
business that you're in and what you do, that you're a public speaker, you're a mentor, and so on and so
Mhm,
forth.
mhm.
Do they always expect you to put that hat on?
Well, you got to recognize the assignment that you're going
Yeah.
into, right? So, this assignment tonight that Simone gave me was very specific. If I was going into assignment where I'm in law enforcement, I will have on a uniform with a gun and a badge. If I'm going into a hospital room, they're not going to want to see Geralda Larkins in a business suit. They're going to want to see Geralda Larkins with a clergy collar and a Bible in hand, ready to lay hands and pray the devil away. So you have to
Yeah,
understand
yeah.
the assignment that that you have and be aligned with that and show up accordingly. I am very apostolic. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I'm an HR executive strategist. So tonight, that's the hat I came into, and but yeah, after I hang up this call, as leaders, we all know I'm about to go snatch this off and that off, and I'm gonna go have probably have a
Free.
bite of dinner to make sure my son got his camp gear ready for tomorrow, and maybe have a cocktail and go to bed. These are the very real things that as humans but you can't take that to you got to be sensitive around what your assignment is at the time. That's one of the weight of responsibility. That's what leadership is all about. You've taken on the responsibility for the hearts of people. Okay. And so, yeah, I take that responsibility very seriously. So when I'm assigned tonight, this was my assignment. You're going to see this. When I got to go to work tomorrow, they're going to see a certain thing. And if I have to, when I'm called to go preach a sermon, I'm going to show up a different way. So the different hats you're called to put on, you have to show up in that role. What, Aretha? You giving me the face? What is it? It's you good? You would
She's thinking, she's processing.
awesome. Excellent. Any other questions?
Yes, yes, yes. Dashanique says, in my field, people appreciate me for being real. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Be authentic. You have to be authentic,
You have
right?
to be. In
Yeah,
this day
yeah.
and time, I think there's so much fakeness out
Hmm.
there that
Hmm.
people really, really appreciate when people are real and authentic
Hmm.
and transparent as well. That you're
Yeah.
able to be vulnerable and to share real life, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't wake up looking like this in the morning,
No.
right?
No,
you
by
you
not
don't feel like
by
this at the
not
end of the
by not
day.
by a little bit, Simone, not by a little bit. Okay. You can see the sweat bubbling even. It's time. It's about that time. But no, real talk, the transparency is a real, it's a balance. Who can you be real around? And make sure that you're not affect your authenticity, realness, transparency is not going to cause someone that's looking to you to stumble in any way or to change or that is the weight of responsibility. So, with that, you have to create these spaces. I have an advisory board for just Geralda. My advisory board helps me to protect me from myself when I'm starting, I'm human.
Yeah, yeah.
When I went through this transition, this period was very hard for me. It's very difficult. The grief, the turmoil, the betrayal, the lessons that I had to learn emotionally, the health. I had to get my health in order. I went through, and so you go through those things, and I'm confident to share it because 300,000 federal employees were affected by the transitions that were happening in the federal government space since 2025. And so for some people, they landed well. Some people, did not land so well. And so for me, it's talking about, regardless of how you land, the very real things that impacted people when leaders that are going through transition, I felt was very important to talk about. And creating these spaces that you're creating, Simone, is so very needed because you can't just talk to anybody. I can't just talk to anybody. My advisory board knows me and will make sure I will get myself back up and back on the pulpit if I had to, or back on getting my grind, putting my resume back out there and getting in front of this computer and doing a webinar. So you need these forums and you need a safe place to be human while you're carrying the real responsibility of leadership. It's not for the faint of heart.
It surely is not. Coach Ruth D, your hand was up. Let's hear
Yes,
from
ma'am.
you. What
Right,
pearls
I
do
know.
you
I
have for
saw
us
the time
tonight?
and I said, thank you so much. Great session. And I resonated with it so much when I saw it advertised. I said, I have to connect. And this year just seemed to be a year of a lot of what y'all been talking about for me as part of my growth. So I just wanted to say that, um, especially as it relates to betrayal and when you're doing that inner work and you're doing that reflection and you've decided to put in those healthy boundaries. I just want to talk about the fact that a lot of people may not understand or they may misinterpret your healthy boundaries that you've established because, of course, it may be now inconvenient for them, or they may say, oh, you're having an attitude now because you've changed, even though for you it's a healthy boundaries. You're remaining very professional with them, but it takes them a while to adjust to your new boundaries. And I just want to say that it's okay for them to misinterpret your boundaries because at the end of the day, it's self-preservation as well, especially after you've been betrayed as you're doing that healing, but also to maintaining your values and your professionalism. But a lot of people, they find it very hard to handle some of those healthy boundaries, especially when the access is now restricted. And so coping with being able to be okay with the fact that some people will misunderstand the healthy boundaries, that's the part of it that I find people who I talk to, they find difficulty in that. listening to the opinions. Oh, you having an attitude. Oh, you acting
Mhm.
different. We so used to you being bubbly and this and that. Yeah, but I now have healthier boundaries. So you're gonna have to get used to it. So just being okay with that until they adjust versus going back on your healthy boundaries or adjusting your healthy boundaries to now accommodate their new opinion of you.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you
Exactly.
more.
Exactly.
I
Yep.
couldn't use
And that's a lesson in and of itself. And it's
hmm
really a lesson for you,
mm,
because now you're really teaching people how you want to be treated. And
yeah.
oftentimes, I think I posted this on my WhatsApp status the other day, oftentimes in their reaction to you being a healthier you is very interesting to see how people respond, who
Yeah.
embraces it and who celebrates you for it and say, it's about time. It's about time, Ruth, that you did this, right? Or you have those people who are like, yeah, I'm angry. I'm angry because I don't have access to you that I did before. I don't get the yes all the time that I used to before. Or you're not saying that you can do this thing for me for free, like how you always do. Now there's a charge. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
I think these are lessons for us to
Mhm.
stay true to ourselves no matter what, because it's so easy to then waffle. We get, we get weak. We start to compromise. We start to give a little, settle a little, and then before you know it, you're back to square one and you're all frustrated and angry again because you're being depleted.
You're not aligned to what your values are and what is important. You have to stay aligned as leaders. You're going to continue to grow, and you're if you're going to scale your influence and impact, you have to have boundaries and systems and things in place to guard access to you so that you can stay focused on what you need to do and that there are proper streams to get access to you, whether it's at a level where you're just buying a book, a level where you're, locking in a coaching consult, and a level where it's your team that's sitting with you and they have, access to you in order to get guidance on the next step. So you have to have levels of access to you if you're going to continue to scale your influence and make it be able to reach more people. So you can't you're if you're just going to stay very small and not impact a lot, then you're not going to have a lot of boundaries, and people are going to benefit from you not having them, right? And usually the healthy leaders connect with other healthy leaders. They'll understand the importance of healthy boundaries and won't make you feel no type of way about it. Okay, you can healthy people, you cannot talk to them for weeks or months, and all of a sudden you pick up the phone, you call Simmone, and you'll be like, girl, I need you, and it'll be like, okay, because they recognize the healthy boundaries, and we all are on assignment, we're all working, we're all doing our thing, that when we're gonna get aligned, when we get together, it's for purpose, it's for an impact, and you're able to ensure that that alignment is there, and you can move forward. But yeah, putting systems in place, putting boundaries in place in which to have access to you is not only for your well-being, but it's also to help you scale your influence and your impact to whatever ministry, business, or whatever you're called to do. Without having those levels, you're going to stay very small.
And that is so true. Oh my goodness. And that's something I have to learn. Yeah, when you want to scale, when you want to grow, when you want to expand your reach, you got to share some of the load and you have to restrict. It's
Yeah.
interesting, right? Like you have to, it's like the tide.
Yeah.
There's ebb and there's flow.
Hmm.
There's giving more, but there's also retreating more in order to,
Yes. Yeah, to give
restricting
more.
the access.
Hmm.
Yeah, to give more. So thank you so much. We have gone so far over time, but this has been such a rich discussion. And so, Aretha, thank you for reflecting back my dream to me. She said, I need to do a retreat here in the Bahamas, and that is what I'm going to do. I actually wanted to do it next year in Mental Health Awareness Month in May. So look out for that. I'll share some information as
Oh,
we
that'd be awesome.
together. Yeah, I think it would really, really be so good to come together and to just share even more and learn from each other. So I want to thank you so much, Geralda, for coming on our webinar tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you all, and God bless you. If you, again, please reach out. These are so important. Simmone, thank you for this platform. You're doing such great work. This is needed. Don't stop. Leaders need other leaders to sharpen and to grow. And so thank you for your courage and your consistency and to bring us together for this moment. So really appreciate
Yeah.
you being
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And all the best to you and what you're doing. I'm looking forward to being a part of your podcast and getting that book
Yes.
because I really want to read Triumph. I think this
Oh,
sounds really timely for me as well. And I really appreciate again you showing up tonight and all of you for showing up, for sticking and staying, for sharing your heart. And hopefully, you've gotten some things that you can take away and apply immediately. Right, Yolanda? We're going to be doing some boundary setting, right? And Aretha, we're going to start training some people on how to treat you the next time they come to dump on you, right? You can say, guess what? I didn't have a good day today. And then watch their reaction. Then maybe they'll be interested in asking you how you're doing, right? All of us have something I'm sure we can take from tonight that we can apply to our lives and to just keep becoming the best version of ourselves. The more that we learn and understand, the more that we are revealing that greater self. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful night. And once you've registered for this, we will share the recording with you. So I know some of you asked about that. So definitely you'll get that. Thank you again. Good night, everyone.